Hey YouTube, it's Marida and welcome to another edition of the Nurse Lounge. And in this edition, we're actually going to talk about something along the lines of the ramifications of being black and going to a predominantly white school. So my name is Marida, Dr. Marida P, and this is Asia, and this is our second edition of Mother-Daughter Talks. And we again are going to talk about some of the ramifications of, what it was like for her to go to a predominantly white school and my choices or decisions as to why I wanted her to do so, or her and her siblings to do so. But let's just kind of start there. So if you want to see more about what my story is and what her story is regarding her feelings of going to a predominantly white school and how it impacted her from elementary on up, then stay tuned. All right, and we are back. My name is Dr. Marida P, and this is my oldest daughter, Asia, and we are again going to talk about the ramifications of her going to a predominantly white school, and just, have a talk. Mother-daughter talks, as the series suggests. So in this particular video, I'm basically wanting to talk about, or we're wanting to talk about her feelings regarding what her experiences were and how it has shaped her today from going to a predominantly white school or schools, because there's been several of them. So I want to preface this by first saying I made these decisions based off, of course, my childhood and my experiences going to school myself. So when I was in high school, I went to a quite diverse high school in a military town. And the high school had basically every color you can think of, but it was predominantly a minority school. It had plenty of white people in it, but because of the military culture and interracial couples, we had a lot of diversity. And also we were a school that filtered in from other schools because we had the VOTEC at our school. So when it came to VOTEC, all the other schools, high schools who had cosmetology, auto mechanic, and whatever other VOTEC classes we had, they all came to our school as well to take those classes. And therefore it made the school even more diverse because we had people from all walks of life, from the projects came to our school, from higher end came to our school, all because of the fact that we were the feed-in school for those VOTEC vocational programs. So I went to school with people who I thought, well, I had a great experience. It was a great high school experience. But that's me going through high school from the high school perspective, not reflecting back from the parenting perspective of how my mom probably could have felt when I was going to this school. So we had fights all the time. We had lockdown. We were on lockdown all the time. And when I say lockdown, I mean where we had bomb sniffing dogs. The dogs were searching for drugs. I was on lockdown all the time thinking that this was normal. In high school, I thought that was normal, that every school had to go on lockdown from time to time because you had the same issues. It wasn't until I became an adult that I realized that no, bomb sniffing dogs, being on lockdown is not normal. That's just was normal to me because that's the kind of school that I went to. We had teen pregnancies. I have classmates or peers, shall I say, who all should be in our 40s right now, who they have grandkids, and it's not unheard of to have grandkids in your 40s. However, their grandkids may be like 10 years old because of the fact that they had kids back in middle school. So we're talking about maybe 12, 13-year-olds having babies. And we're talking about also in middle school or in high school, several of them having babies as well. Our pregnancy rate was very, very high. I was fortunate. I won't say was fortunate, but I didn't get pregnant until after I graduated from high school, which was back then. That was like, wow, you made it through high school without getting pregnant. That's the kind of school that I went to. So you take a school where you have fights all the time, you're on lockdown all the time. My let's just say people that I dated are now in the penitentiary for things that they were doing back then. We had all kinds of issues back then in school, but again, that was normal to me. So since that was normal to me, I'm like, okay, this is cool. This was fun. We had games, we had shootings at games. I mean, it was bad. I know this sounds terrible, but it was fun at the time. Not the shootings part, but just the hanging out and things like that, not knowing that this was not a good environment for me. And this was just normal to us. So if you grew up in an environment like that where all that is normal to you, what I'm saying of is not unheard of. You're like, oh, okay, that was normal. We all had stuff like that all the time where we had, maybe you all had to walk through not smoke detectors, metal detectors at your school, or you had to be, searched at your school. Some inner city schools are kind of like that. I'm from a smaller town. We didn't have nothing like that. So it wasn't where we had metal detectors, but we did have those SRO cops, or what we called, I guess they're called SRO officers, where they kind of patrolled. And that became a norm for us back when I was in school. It was unheard of before then. Now every school, pretty much even from middle school on up, even elementary school, has a SRO officer at their school. But back when I was in school, that was the new thing with having one, because of the violence and the issues that we had in our schools. So fast forward, now it's time for me to have my own kids, or I had my own child. So I graduated in 96 from high school, 97 became pregnant, and in 98 had her. And so as I'm reflecting and thinking back to what I want her to have, I'm kind of like, I wasn't thinking about high school for her in elementary school, obviously. But as time went on and she got older, I'm kind of like, you know what? I kind of went through some things in high school that I don't think I want her to be exposed to. So actually when I finished nursing school, I moved to areas in which, was a good mixture, was quite diversely, so I thought. And she went to quite diverse schools from, say, pre-K on up through the maybe 7th or so grade. And then as we started approaching high school, we were zoned for a certain school who basically had the same demographics that the school I went. It wasn't the same school, but the same demographics, the same issues. They had a very high teen pregnancy rates. The school stayed in the news for violence and things that was going on there. Very much reminiscent of what I had endured in high school. And even though I thought it was fun to went to a school that, not for the crime and nothing like that, but it was just fun because it was just fun people there. I didn't want her exposed to that. I didn't want her exposed to schools that stayed on the news for who done got shot this time, or they're on lockdown, or the teen pregnancy rate is so high they have a teen pregnancy counselor at the school. And that's the kind of school that she was going to be zoned for. So I opted, and I couldn't afford private school. So we opted to move to an area, which is where I still live, in which she would be pretty much the minority, very much a minority. So not even just being black, but being black was truly a minority in the areas that we went to school, or she went to school. And so at this point, I'm going to let her kind of take over and share the ramifications, or her side of the story about, okay, yeah, I did go to this kind of school, but what did it actually do to me, or to her, shall I say, mentally, emotionally, in terms of even physically? What types of things happened to her as a result of her having to go to a predominantly white school where she's now the minority, more so the minority versus it being kind of diverse. Now, keep in mind, for the most part, we're the minority most places, but in this particular situation, she was very much the minority. And plus, we moved to a town that's a little bit more country. So because they're a little bit more country, they're kind of like the agricultural kind of kids. It's kind of how I think of it. Like, the people who wear John Deere clothing and boots and mud trucks and things like that. But again, it provided a better quality education in this area than where we were zoned for. So I'm gonna let her take over. This is Asia. I'm gonna let her take over in terms of her experiences, and she will start from wherever she starts from and bring us forward.
Yeah, so I would say up until about the 7th grade, I went to very diverse schools, like my mom said. I never had a problem with making friends. All my friends, I had black friends, white friends, Hispanic friends. I just never had a problem like just being around people. But then around the seventh grade, it was actually the second half of seventh grade. I remember because it was just so traumatic for me. Not really, but it was just being I was 12 I think, and moving to a brand new school, a brand new town, a brand new everything when you're 12, and it's the second semester of seventh grade. So like it's kind of I feel like at that point when I was 12 I kind of missed my chance to make friends, which in hindsight that's silly, but like when you're 12 years old you're not really thinking about stuff like that. And yeah, when in the seventh grade I was just the only black girl, okay, and it was just shocking because like prior to that point, I mean, there were plenty of black girls. I wasn't the only one. It wasn't a big deal being black. But in the seventh grade, it was just a big deal because the school itself was small. First of all, I think there were about maybe 75 kids in the seventh grade. Um, yeah, and I came from bigger schools, so the fact that there were only 75 kids in the seventh grade was very like shocking to me. And there were maybe I think there were three black people in the entire seventh grade, and I was one of them. It was a black girl, me, and another black guy, and they were very. The other black people, they were very. I don't know how to say this. I don't want to say whitewashed, but they had to fit in. Being in the seventh grade, they wanted to fit in, so they dressed how everyone else dressed. Their hair, the black girl, it was long and straight, and I think I was wearing braids at the time or something, braids or twists or something, and just people were just they didn't know what to think of me. I remember also the first day of seventh grade, I got on the wrong bus and I went to the high school on accident, and that was just also traumatizing because I was this new black girl at this country school who got on the wrong bus. So people like kind of knew me as that girl who kind of was weird and quiet and black, and got on the wrong bus, went to the high school. So like I was late for the first day of seventh grade. So that I felt isolated even more because I was just different. I felt weird, and it was just a really for me, it wasn't a very good experience being one of the only black people. Like I remember distinctly, there's this one guy. I'm not gonna say his name obviously, but I remember him to this day. He would make comments like, "Ooh, there's Shaniqua coming," and like that just like now it obviously hurts, but back then being 12, being the only black girl in this school or one of the only black girls, that really hurt. Like I didn't want to be Shaniqua, I wanted to be Asia. That's my name. Call me Asia. He would my locker didn't have a lock on it for some reason, so he put locks on my locker so I couldn't access my books. He did little things like that. He'd make little snide comments about like my intelligence, call me Shaniqua. I think at one point he made a comment about my mom. Just I don't know. It was something about I don't know. He just I consider it bullying what he was doing because it was persistent. It lasted the entire semester. I never went to anyone about it
because I'm just finding out now.
Yeah, I don't remember telling. I guess I didn't tell you this.
I don't ever find it. This is the first I've heard of this, and she's 22. And
yeah,
this happened at 12.
And I still think about it sometimes because it just makes me mad. Like I was scared being at this school. Like not scared for my safety, just scared because I was lonely. Like I had a few friends, but like I was friends with the people who were. I don't want to say losers, but we weren't popular. I was never like a popular kid, and that's fine. I'm still not very popular. That's totally fine. But like in the seventh grade, when you're 12, popularity is everything. You want to do everything you can to fit in, be popular, have a lot of friends. Being me, I just wasn't friends with the cool kids. I loved my friends. They were great friends. They were so supportive. But just we were not very popular. We got made fun of a lot. So. And I really think being black in that situation made it worse. Like I think if I was white, I still would have probably gotten bullied, but it wouldn't have been as bad. There wouldn't have been any Shaniqua comments. There wouldn't have been any comments about my intelligence and stuff like that. So that's how the seventh grade was for me. And it's funny because right after seventh grade, I went to a magnet school downtown, and it was mostly like 95% black people, black kids, and very very few white people, and a lot of I guess Middle Eastern minorities. So it was kind of the complete opposite, and it was a kind of a culture shock. Like, wow, these people are like me. They look like me. Like, they have braids, they have ponytails, they have like twists and locks, and like they just look like me. And it felt good at first being around people who looked like me, but then after a while, I kind of realized I wasn't black enough for them. If that makes sense. Like they would make comments about how I talked white, and just things like that. I was in the advanced classes, so there were obviously black people in those advanced classes, being a mostly black school, but there were just kind of less of them. There's mostly the other minorities in those advanced classes in the 8th grade, So like I kind of ostracized myself even more because I acted white. I liked to read. I was kind of nerdy. So like I just felt even around my own people, I felt different and like I just felt like I didn't really belong. I wasn't black enough. Even though I looked black, I still didn't fit in with the black people. And that made me feel like I'll never fit in. Like I'm not white. Like I'll never. I've always had white friends, but I felt like I can never be white. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm surrounded by black people, but I apparently can't be black either. It's like, what am I? Or who can I talk to? Who are my friends if I can't be black or white? Like, who can I hang out with? So it's funny. I mostly hung out with like the Middle Eastern minorities, a lot of Muslims. I was friends with them because they weren't a part of the black or white debate. They were just, you know, they're kind of in their own bubble. So I kind of joined their bubble. So that's what eighth grade was like for me. And then
And before you go on though, so let me tell why we end up going back to the magnet school. So we had moved to the other county that I told you all about, you know, for her to have better opportunities. But then, how you know how you use people's addresses and stuff like that? Because she had an opportunity to go to a magnet school, I wanted to try and see if she could go there. And so that's how she ended up back at this magnet school, because this magnet school fed into another high school magnet school. And I wanted her to go to that high school magnet school. So that's how she ended up at the black magnet school that fed into a high school, which is like a feeder. They went to that school afterwards. And it ended up that she didn't get into this high school because of, I think, her ACT.
Math.
It was an ACT score.
It was like math.
Yeah, so she was like points away from getting into this school because of some grades. But and after that, we realized we had already moved to the other county. So then she had to come back to the county we actually lived in to go back to the high school that she was truly zoned for using our correct address. You know how people do that, right? And at this point in time, it's all said and done, so we can talk about it now because she's out of high school, out of college. But that's what we did. We lived in one county, but I wanted her to go to the magnet school and have the magnet school experience. And so we used my mother-in-law's address at that point in time to keep her in the county, because we was going to have to drive her to school anyway. That was how that school was. You had to drive them to school. There was no bus or anything, so it wouldn't have mattered. But when she didn't get in, we had to say, okay, well, we got to go back to what we're zoned for, which is, again, back to the predominantly white school. So you heard her say, you know, okay, so she went to the white school, or the more white school, predominantly white school, and didn't fit in. And then went to the black school and didn't fit in. So, you know, I think we have some of those same issues even today, where those microaggressions, you know, being called Shaniqua, well, that's not her name, you know, and that, again, I didn't know that. But I think we all kind of face some of those same things where we're like, okay, I'm not black enough to be black. I'm definitely not white, but I don't fit in any crowd. So, and then she kind of alluded to, or not even alluded to, she mentioned about her intelligence and being smart, and how in the black community, for a lot of us, that is downplayed. It is not cool to be smart. And that is something that I've tried to rewrite that story, that narrative for her going forward. Because I grew up that exact same way, where it's not really that cool to be smart. And to show that you're smart and to make good grades, you get talked about being black in a lot of places. And I don't, you know, some of y'all gonna come and say, well, no, that's not how well, just because you don't raise your kids that way, which is great, that doesn't mean as how we are growing up, or how she's telling she grew up, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen elsewhere. There's places that, prime example, my soon to be ex-husband is one of those who would kind of downplay being smart as not being cool, you know, as being dumb, or I won't say being dumb, but being average intelligent, shall I say, is what's cool. Because you chose to take AP classes or advanced classes or whatever kind of classes, you know, and we were talking more about that kind of in another video, but that made you not be as intelligent because of it, or not cool because you ended up with these, you know, taking classes with these other kind of students. So back to what she was saying, when she was in school with these, she fit in with the Muslims and the Middle Eastern children, shall I say. Why? Because they actually, their families, their culture, you know, pushes education. They push education to the point where, like, okay, no, you're going to be a lawyer. You're going to, usually a doctor for them. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be this, that, and the other. She was in a group with those people because of the fact that that's kind of where she was mentally. I pushed education. And education for me has no color. It just how happens to be you're black. and you will get shunned for being smarter than, for working harder than, for, and I get shunned the exact same way, or I got shunned the exact same way when I grew to accept who I was. I was that BC student. I was that A, B, C. I would make A's and B's and one C always in something, usually math. And I didn't want her to be that way. So I never really, what I grew to become, I never thought I would be me, because why? It was never enforced. It was never pushed. It was never like, oh, you're so smart. And I was never even told that. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying my parents just didn't never tell me that. They would say how beautiful you are, but they would never tell me how smart I was. I never started hearing how smart I was and started getting these degrees. I'm like, oh wait, I think I might be halfway intelligent. Or you have to be very smart to become a doctor, or to become a nurse, or become the whatever. And you do have to be very smart to become a nurse. But I never thought I was her, because I was never told I was her. I put that into their head very, very early. Oh, you're so smart. You're so pretty. You're so this. You have to feed it to them, because otherwise they don't know. But as you see in the Black culture or community, it does not fare well. They don't like when we have, some people don't like when we're intelligent, and that goes on both sides. There's some white people who don't like when we're intelligent either, because intelligence is power, knowledge is power, and we know that. So anyway, not to interject too long, but I wanted to say as to why we switched from going from where we lived back to a magnet school, and then coming back to the counties, because she didn't end up not getting into the high school magnet school that I wanted her to go to, that had its focus on STEM and healthcare and things like that, which really in hindsight was best for her, because she was not interested in any of that. So it kind of worked out that the school that she ended up going to had a culinary program, and that's what she at the time was interested in. So all right, now I'm gonna let her take back over. Now she's went to high school. We're back into the county that we actually live in currently today, and take over.
So we're back in the county. I went to the same high school all 4 years, which I really appreciate, because I think I would have been a lot worse off if I had gone to different high schools. It's interesting because in the seventh grade, some of those students, it kind of fit into the high school, if that makes sense. So I was kind of seeing the same people I saw back in the seventh grade, and some of them remembered me, some of them didn't, and they kind of thought I was just still that quiet, black kid who was different. But the great thing about high school is it's a lot bigger. And I think my high school, I think three different towns kind of fed into this high school. So even though it was still all mostly white, it was still more diverse. I think diverse in the sense of, I guess, different white people, if that makes sense. Like, it's like not, like, obviously not everyone is the same, right? So the kind of the central focus of this high school was agriculture, things like that. But also, there were kids who were into art, so there were white kids who were into art, into cooking, into mechanic work. So it was just very diverse in that sense, which I really appreciated. And they had a culinary program, which I really enjoyed. I mean, high school overall was it was better. I wouldn't say a lot better, but it was better. I noticed when I was in the ninth grade, there still, obviously weren't many black people. But no one said anything about me. I do remember this one moment I had, I think kinky twist or Singalese twist in the ninth grade, and it was really pretty, obviously. And this girl, I didn't know this girl. It was a white girl. She walked up to me and she's like, "Oh, this is so pretty. What is this?" And like, at the time I felt flattered. I was like, "Oh, she likes my hair." But then now as an adult thinking back on it, I kind of realized that, for one, why are you touching someone you don't know? Two, it just, petting someone, she was petting me, and it just made me feel like an animal. Like, looking back, I was like, that's kind of, you don't do this to people you don't know, especially if we were friends, okay, maybe, but like, things like that kind of happened. I also remember one time in the 10th grade, there was this new girl. She was new to the entire county, new to the school. It was in honors biology. She sat next to me. It was a white girl. She sat next to me, and we ended up, being good friends in that class. And then later on, she told me, I only sat next to you because you're black, so I thought you were going to be loud and funny. And that, like, really hurt my feelings. At that point, I remember saying to her, "Oh, okay." But then I still sometimes think about this, like, she only sat next to me because I'm black, so she just assumed I'm loud and funny. Which doesn't sound like it'd be, like, a bad thing, but really it just, like, I'm not loud. I'm a very quiet person. I've never been loud. And I mean, I think my friends laugh, but I wouldn't consider myself funny. It's not the first thing people would describe me as. But like, I just felt, I didn't appreciate being stereotyped like that. And I guess people might say it's not really harmful. Like we became, okay friends, but still, I want people to sit next to me because I seem friendly or like I seem like a good person, not because oh she's black, she must be this, this, and this. Like that isn't that. I didn't like that. So I was kind of cold on her from that point on, and we kind of like grew apart. So other than like little things like that, high school was good. That same guy who bullied me in the 7th grade, I avoided him. Like he ended up changing for the better. He was a lot more polite, and he actually apologized to me at one point. I didn't accept the apology, but I mean, glad that he apologized, I guess. But yeah, in hindsight, high school was pretty good. I did notice that as I progressed through the grades from 9th through 12th, when I was in the 12th grade, I saw a lot of black like underclassmen. So I really liked that. Like as the years kept going on and on, there were more people who looked like me. I didn't get to like have classes with them or anything, but it still felt good to see that more black people are moving to the area. Maybe those kids wouldn't go through the same thing I did. Um, so yeah, it still feels isolating when all your friends were white. Went to prom, all my friends were white, and it's fine. It's like I had a great time in high school. I had a great time at prom. I had a great time doing things with people. But like it just feels kind of isolating when no one like when all your friends are white and there just isn't any other option.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just hard to talk about things like oh I spent like hours getting my hair done or like just things like that, like going to people's houses getting your hair done. They're just things you can't talk about with like your white friends. They just don't get it. Like I remember one time in the 9th grade, I think it was Kinky Twist, and someone asked me, "So do you like wash your hair? Like how does that work?" And just like it's an innocent question. It's an honest question. You're not gonna know unless you ask. But just sometimes you don't want to answer stuff like that. You just want to be black and just exist and not have to explain yourself to people. Like I just things like that. But overall, I really enjoyed high school. But I will say that I think my experiences in the 7th and 8th grade kind of really affected me in high school. Like I noticed looking back, I didn't think it was a problem back then. I thought it was fine back then. But looking back, I realized I like to straighten my hair a lot. I'd wear I wanted to be white like my friends. I wanted to fit in, like I wanted to look like them. So I remember I liked to straighten my hair. I hated having like braids and stuff, and I hated having the twists and stuff because it wasn't what my friend Jessica had. It wasn't. I wanted just plain, just straight black hair. My hair just straight, no curl to it, no nothing. I do remember actually. I had like most teenagers, I had acne in high school, but there was this cream I remember using at one point, and it lightened my skin. And I realized, oh, I like my skin when it's a little bit lighter, and so I kept using it and using it. And my mom noticed. She was like, "You need to stop using that cream because you look like washed out. Like it was patchy. So I looked sick, honestly. Like I looked sick. What's going on there? I looked sick." So of course, back when I was, 14, 15, I didn't really think anything of it. But looking back now, I just kind of realized how sad that is. Like I didn't want to look like myself. I didn't want to look this dark. I want to at least pass for mix. Because I remember thinking that at one point in high school. I want to at least try and pass as mixed or something. Like I don't want to be this dark because being this dark is bad. So I do think that's because of just growing up around people who didn't look like me. I'm not sure if I had grown up around like all black people if that would have changed. I feel like it would, but I do know there's still colorism in the black community even so. So I'm not really sure how much of that is just being black or how much of that is, being with the majority white population. So I'm not really sure. But it's really sad that I felt that way. Like it's really sad that I thought I'm not pretty with this skin tone. Like I need to be lighter. Like only if you're black, great, but you have to be a light-skinned black person to be beautiful. And I think that's really sad. So luckily, I graduated high school, things were fine. In college, I never really had a problem with being black. I went to a PWI, but I still saw black people every day. There were black people in all my classes. It was only about 3 or 4 of my classes, but it felt good being around other people who looked like me. It was a lot better than middle school and high school. So I think I really got to embrace being black. Like I saw other black girls who just beautiful. I saw other beautiful black girls. And that made me feel really good. Like, oh, I can do that too. I can look beautiful too. I just have to, put some effort in. Like being black is beautiful. So I'm really glad that I got better and that I still don't have those thoughts. Having the straight hair and stuff. Like I haven't had a desire to have straight hair like a long time. Since high school. Like I actually cut my hair off, so now it's short and it's all natural. I just feel really good. So things have improved so much, and I'm really happy that they have. But yeah, I really do think growing up with like mostly white people really affected me negatively. Um, but I think looking back on those experiences in hindsight, I guess it helped me grow and helped me realize like the importance of loving yourself just in general, especially loving being black and recognizing that black is beautiful no matter how light or dark you are, no matter what color you are, just loving yourself. So even though it wasn't the best experiences, I really do think it helped me become the person I am today. And for that, I think it's a valuable experience. So, yeah.
So there you have it. So you saw that, my goal again was to make sure she was not in an environment that was reminiscent of what I had endured. I didn't want her to have teen pregnancies. I didn't want her to see drugs all the time or ever, really, or just fights all the time. And as a result of that, we had to change counties and, change the demographics, definitely different out here. And this is how she's feeling, even at this point in time. She's still, we tend to remember bad things that happen more so than we remember good things that happen. And so if she can point out, probably to the day what happened in seventh grade and how this impacts her even today, to either not love who she was at that point in time to now becoming, as an adult, loving who she was. But I don't know. This is a conversation to be had. Do you feel that what if, people always say, well, we should always stick with our own and things like that. But for her, that didn't work either because she was neither side, so to speak. And the thing is, I hear a lot of mixed children say that. I hear a lot of children who are like black and white say they don't really fit in on either side because they're not white enough, they're not black enough or whatever. She's just all black and having that exact same issue, but because of the fact that she sounds like she could be white, or she very much hung out with white people, or she took classes that the average black person didn't take, that just put her in a different kind of category all on its own. And so we have that paired with what, the students and stuff like that. And again, we do live in a country kind of town, an affluent country town, shall I say. Is pretty affluent, or at least the part we live in is affluent. Now the school she went to, it fed in from different counties who were, as she was saying, they were different walks of life. So you have different SESs, or socioeconomic status kind of people. You had very poor whites who went to this school. You had very high class whites that went to this school. So because it fed into from different areas, you saw different things. So people who, the agricultural group, who they wasn't per se poor, but they lived from the farm. They did mudding. They had mud trucks. They came in on their boots that were already muddy. They had big belts, and they had, like I said, the John Deere gear on, and that was normal for that group of people. Then you had your more, I guess it's no different than any other school, because in my high school we had those kind of country people too. You had your gothic people. You had your the jocks, of course, the football players, the sports people. You had the people who were the nerds, the people who had those. You had every walk of life is what we're trying to say at this school. But then you had the people who were black who didn't really fit into any of them. They were not into doing this or doing that and the other that typical black people are into doing. And you kind of felt ostracized in that way. So, that is the ramifications. That's what this video is about. It's about telling you the truth, and I want this series of the mother-daughter talks to be truthful. And again, I'm learning things today that I never knew that happened way back in the day. But, sometimes we think we're doing something for the benefit of our child, and I still have no regrets about putting her in that environment. I have no regrets. I wouldn't do anything any different, even in hindsight, even after hearing this. I wouldn't do anything any different, but it's part of the growing pains that we have to go through as children to know where we fit in, and to know, and life lessons, to know who you are as an adult, who you are, as a child, where do you fit in at. And then sometimes we just don't fit in. And I have to say, I didn't have those kind of issues in high school growing up. I had my little clique that I was with. I was not per se popular. But I was always known as the girl with the eyes. The girl with the eyes? They never knew my name, or they couldn't say it correctly. But the girl with the eyes. I was the girl. I have hazel eyes, and they're really my eyes. And they used to change color, and they still do. From either really light to chestnut brown. And I was always known as the girl with the eyes. So that was the pretty girl with the eyes. And I was hated on because of the eyes. They thought they were contacts and all that jazz that was going on back then. So I had my own other issues, but I was not popular, but I was known in that sense, the girl with the eyes. And so we have those issues. And in high school, for me, like I told you, it was fun. But at the same time, we stayed on lockdown. The police stayed at our school. People stayed getting arrested at my school. And I did what I did because I thought about, no, I do not want her having a boyfriend that's in the penitentiary. I don't want her to, You know, my prom date is in the penitentiary as we speak. My prom date from back then is in the penitentiary today still for whatever he did. But whatever he did was penitentiary worthy. That's where he at. And that's what I kind of grew up around, people who was going to the penitentiary. Like, I have people that I knew from high school who just got out the pen probably about 4 or 5 years ago. That's the kind of people I grew up with. That was a negative for her. I didn't want that to happen to her, to have that kind of reference in her life about people who, that's her framework in terms of like, yeah, all my boyfriends went to the penitentiary, all my boyfriends in jail right now as we speak. I didn't want that for her. So as a result, this is what we have. But I have no regrets still. And you know, she lived her life, went through those experiences, and she still came out okay with that. So anyway, that concludes this video. Thank you for watching this video in its entirety. Please like, share, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And we will keep bringing these videos to you with different either race issues that we've had, or school issues that we had being Black, or just maybe mother-daughter conflicts that we've had, you know, in terms of like, she didn't agree with that when she was growing up, but that's how it was. And maybe she couldn't enlighten us about some things like that, things that I'm learning new as we speak. So anyway, thank you for watching this video. Until the next time, you all take care. Bye-bye.